welcome to the Fourth Estate, the show that discusses the stories of the week and how the newsrooms have covered them. Today we have our former host. Very glad to have you today, Charles. Thank you so much for making the time for us.
Thank you, Raymond, for inviting me.
Agatha says you're lost and found.
Yeah? No, I've not been lost. I've been very much around.
Hey, we haven't seen you in a while. Yes.
I haven't been in this studio for about 13 months now. Yes, 13 months.
Wow. We are so glad to have you back.
Thank you for inviting me.
And we have Agatha. Agatha, thank you so much for making the time again.
Thank you, Raymond. I am glad to be here.
Yes. I'd like to start with you, Charles. The biggest story this week was the passing on of John Pombe Magufulu, the Tanzanian president. As the former editor for the East African, but also someone that knows a thing or two about the region, how would you write his tribute?
Former bureau chief.
Bureau chief, yes.
For Kampala office.
Yeah.
It's a mixed one. A large part of Magufuli's contribution to Tanzania, to the region and to the continent is going to be written positively, very positively. He rattled things in Tanzania, a country that has seen only one party rule it since independence. It was important that it gets a person like Magufuli to kind of rattle it a little bit, create new slogans, almost create a kind of return to the Mwalimu era. Things like fight against corruption. Many people in Tanzania and in the region will tell you Tanzania had reached an unprecedented level of tolerance to corruption. Yes, many of the projects he accomplished, his predecessors had started on. But he also tells something about the significance of internal change. So it's one political party that's been running things since independence, but it's had those constant changes. And what we saw the other day with his successor taking over, you're counting 5 or 6 peaceful transitions in that country. That is very positive. But what people have kind of tended to mute out of the discussion about Magufuli's legacy is the fact that he cracked quite a few bones. He broke a few bones, cracked a few heads, especially of colleagues in the media. When I said this on Friday on the hot seat, Andrew said we shouldn't care about what he did to journalists, but he did.
He actually jailed journalists.
He jailed journalists, yes. He beat up a few, though I know that was also a continuation from what Chikwete had been doing. If you look at guys like Kabendera, whom he jailed, whom Magufuli jailed, he had been beaten up seriously by the previous regime. Yes. And then, of course, he really did beat up the opposition thoroughly, on mainland Tanzania especially. And that is going to be part of his mixed legacy. Broadly positive, that fight against corruption, people might think it wasn't important. It is important to talk about those things. It is important to get a country talking about some of those significant ills. And then kind of trying to shift the focus of foreign investment. Foreign investment shouldn't be only looking at the money that comes in or who is coming in. It also should look at where those resources, how they're going to impact the country. And that, I think he did a fair good job. That in 5 years as president, he was able to move Tanzania ahead of schedule to get into lower middle income status is important.
Agatha, when I was watching the tributes of Magufuli, one of the things that stood out in all of them is that he was a COVID denier. COVID just happened last year, but it shaped up a lot of his legacy. Many people say the biggest failure that Magufuli has encountered in his presidency was denying COVID, and some even say that it is the reason why he could have died the way that he died. Does that shape up a lot of his legacy? Is that something that he will be remembered for?
Yeah, I think so. I think it does, and especially because of the severity of that decision. Because, okay, while as human beings we naturally tend to dwell more on the bad. Now it's worse that this bad was very critical to even human existence. So I think that was a wrong decision that he made, and that would really haunt him. But when you still look at things that the Tanzanians, the way they are mourning him now, you see people that are looking more at what he was able to do for them in the few years he has been president. It's us on the outside that say that a lot. people there, I don't know if they have yet understood the extent of that decision that the leadership in Tanzania made regarding COVID, or if for them the good he did still stands out more. Like he says in a speech that has been making rounds in Tanzania, that he knows he will be remembered more for, and not for anything bad, but for the good things and the sacrifices he has made for that country. And it looks like that's what them in Tanzania, apart from us, who are on the outside, are looking at how he managed to turn around the health system, the infrastructure in Tanzania, the economy and the GDP. We saw it move by more than $15 billion from 2015 to 2020. So it seems they actually look more at that. The bad things are there, and they are there in every country. I tell Ugandans all the time that we keep saying, oh, Magufuli was a dictator, and we talk about what he has done to journalists, what he has done to the opposition. Are we any better here? What has happened to journalists here, or what has happened to the opposition?
That's the thing I wanted to ask Charles about. In writing the eulogy of Magufuli, there's been, of course, the mirror on the wall. Can the nationalist movement have a smooth transition the way CCM has had it in Tanzania? Can Uganda, if we had a scenario as has happened in Tanzania, can Uganda recover from it? Would you add that as part of the eulogy in the press?
I don't know. You're comparing apples with oranges, I think, in a way. In the region, we've had the most presidents since independence. But we've had the most chaotic transitions in the region. And we haven't seen a transition. We have never seen a smooth transition, not once in our history. We have not, we're not certain how the next transition will be, because inevitably there will be a transition. As and when that happens, we don't know, and how it will happen, we don't know. We're praying that it will be smooth. So for that, you will give the people of Tanzania, the CCM as a party, that credit. Because many people would have been hard-pressed to imagine that a vice president in a very machoistic constitution, because it refers to he, the assumption is whoever is going to take over from an infirm president, whoever is going to take over from a president who dies in office, is going to be a male, a he. To find that a woman has taken over, she doesn't have as deep roots in politics as the others have, not even in the CCM. She's coming from a background of an activist. She's Zanzibari. Ugandans have been celebrating. They thought her husband was Ugandan. He's not Ugandan. He's Zanzibari.
Yes, he's Zanzibari.
He's Zanzibari.
But we've ruled Zanzibar before as Ugandans. So
no, we haven't. Okello didn't rule Zanzibar. He only contributed to the struggle. Yeah. But is a legacy that you credit, that's a credit that doesn't go to Magufuli. It goes to the people of Tanzania. It goes to the foundational roots.
And to CCM, right?
And to CCM, yes. Well, CCM hasn't transitioned to any other party, so we don't know what it would look like. Though the opposition has been significantly grown.
For having those structures that NRM doesn't have here, for
example. Exactly. Internal change within the party is important. But let me say something about COVID. One of the contributors, the East African, at least for the time I was there, and she still continues to contribute, Else Eyakuze, ran a Twitter thread yesterday, which is deeply, deeply revealing or affirming what we knew, what we followed. We were having weekly discussions with colleagues in Tanzania when I was still at the East African. And then you would finish the formal office meeting and then go into private chats with our colleagues in Tanzania. And they told of horrifying stories. And that denial, it sends a message across the country. Many people died. Else was writing about very close people and saying, this is not my story alone. Multitudes of other families, of other people have lost even more people than I have lost because of this COVID denialism, which was quite a contradiction for a professor of chemistry that Magufuli was, with a lot of people, and that the Politburo, the structures around CCM wouldn't rein him in and say, no, we can't continue with this. was kind of a huge contradiction. Though you saw later, he also came to terms. Now that is a significant shift, that he came to terms and accepted there was COVID. People started wearing masks, people started social distancing the best they could, even as life appeared to continue normally for the rest of Tanzanians. But that loss in human life, that damage, Tanzania will feel it for a very long time to come.
For a very long time to come. I want us for a very short while to discuss another matter of transition. In Uganda, we've had a speakership race. This week, Jacob Olanya appeared on NTV. And of course, one of the profound things he said is the NRM SEC had assured him that in the last election, by stepping down for Kadaga, in this election, he would transition to become the Speaker of Parliament. And now it seems that the question is still out into the wild. What do you make of the speakership race? Start with you, Agatha.
So the speakership race goes back to our failure to transition, like you put it, of people getting in positions and making it seem like, you know, they are entitled to staying in those positions. And it's mainly Speaker Kadaga this time that she has been Deputy Speaker for 10 years, has been Speaker for 10 years, and those are 20. And the last time she was campaigning to be Speaker, she was, the line was, why don't they want me to finish my 10 years? And she was saying that because her predecessor had been Speaker for 10 years, Speaker Sekandi. And she finished her 10 years, but she still wants to be Speaker. I don't know now what she's saying. Maybe she hasn't started saying why she thinks she's still entitled to be Speaker again. But at the end of the day, it's an issue that we shouldn't pay a lot of attention to, because in this country, it doesn't matter who the Speaker is. When Speaker Kadaga came to office in 2011, us journalists especially, there's a story that The Independent did in 2011, my friend Yasa Mchibi, and I was at The Independent then, and the title was A Reformer at Parliament. And that story reflected the expectations that everyone had in Rebecca Kadaga as Speaker, because we had come from the speakership of Sekande, who was like, very easily he would toe the executive line without even them trying so hard. If you remember the Temangalo NSSF story, if you remember the term limit removal, if you remember the probe on, there's an IGG issue, but all those he would simply gag other MPs, the opposition, and pass the reports that the executive wanted passed. There's in fact an issue where the deputy, Kadaga, then challenged him because he was saying, it was the Temangalo report, he was saying that the majority report should be given to the members who want to write the minority to form a basis. Among the people he was commanding they give it to was the accused in that report, former Prime Minister Mama Mbabazi. And Speaker Kadaga refused, and I mean deputy then. So that had made Kadaga already, she had been endeared to the MPs. They had thought that with her, especially the opposition, and those who love an independent parliament, they had thought that with her things would be different. When she came, things were different for like the first few months, but not really different when you look at the actual terms. For example, the 9th Parliament, which was, you know, Speaker Kadaga's first presided over Parliament, didn't pass even up to 60 bills. And the previous two, steered by Speaker Sekandi, had passed around 105 in 7th Parliament and 95 in the 8th Parliament. So in actual terms, still, there hasn't been something much. Apart from the fact that they argue that Rebecca Kadaga gives everyone time to speak. But to speak what? There's a report that said they most times just, you know, random things, pick up matters of importance. Sometimes they're praising the speaker, sometimes. So it's, in the end, I do not think it matters a lot. I think that we are happier that with Kadaga, the executive has not really had it easy, but in the end, President Museveni has had his way. And we can count there's so many controversial issues in that house ever since Kadaga came to the helm. and you start with the oil debate, you go to the oil bills debate, you go to POMA, you go
age limit.
You go to age limit. So if you are faulting second for allowing the term limit to pass, this steered by Kadaga allowed a worse clause that. So at the end of the day, we should probably just not fuss about it and waste our time with that. But
Charles, shouldn't we fuss about number 3 position in the country? The seeming lack of transition there.
Well, you know, what don't we fuss about in this country? I think we do fuss about almost everything. But the question for me is, we'd still have to watch and see how President Museveni acts on Parliament. Anybody in government today will tell you they're waiting for the new government to be formed. How new that new government will be is a matter that of conjecture, maybe. You might want to put it that way. But for Parliament itself, very interesting, the kind of debate that's going on. It's sad that members can go on the floor of Parliament and talk about money in the way they did, talk about money the other day. You know, I participated in this election, and I know the role money plays in an election and determining who gets elected and doesn't get elected. And to find that that is now introduced on the floor of Parliament in almost normal discussion, for me, is sad. The number 2 is, yes, it's the number 3 position in the country. But can that institution stand on its own? Like Agatha said, can it stand on its own? Can it challenge the status quo? If it does, to what end? For the period of stay, I don't think Kadaga has done anything wrong, because the culture is that. You go to public service and check.
Numbers.
You go to public service and check. All those elderly men and women who should be retiring are remembering that they filled in the wrong years when they were entering public service. And they're applying to have
a change of age.
Change of age. That's happening all over. So that she has been in Parliament and at the helm as Deputy Speaker for 10 years and another 10 years as Speaker doesn't create much of a difference. And the other question you will ask is, really, would a different person among those running for the speakership create that fundamental shift in terms of power relations? Parliament is dominated by the NRM party. The Speaker will and must come from the NRM party because they have the numbers. They'll vote for that person whom the party thinks is the right person to be voted for. So even if our friends like Semu Junganda says they want to stand, people think they are straw candidates who will not amount to much, because try as much as he could, he can't marshal half of that house to vote for him. So the rest is still an internal NRM matter, which will take me to something else. Alhaji Moses Chigongo doesn't write often. He doesn't speak often.
He doesn't even make public appearances.
He doesn't make public appearances often. I remember I moved with him a little when he was popularizing the transition to multi-party politics. I was a young journalist then, about 2003, 2004, and I was preparing the country to expect that transition and embrace it. So we went to his home village, we went to Masaka, we went to a few other places. But off the camera, in his quiet way, he'll tell you things that are very deep. And when he sat down to write that letter, to say, don't drag the party into your issues in Parliament, even before, because the guys debating this transition in Parliament are not the people going to vote. Majority of the guys we have in this background here are not going to vote for the Speaker. Majority of the people who will vote for the new Speaker of Parliament are still out there waiting to be sworn in. So why intensify that debate in a house that is not going to make the decision? What is the thinking of that large number of people outside of Parliament?
Utilizing the incumbents, the power of the incumbents.
Yes, using the bully pulpit, trying to create the psyche, trying to create, to prepare those who haven't entered yet, to tell them, as you come in, this is the direction we are taking. That I find a little bit more intriguing than anything else in that transition. You talk about, I watched your interview with Deputy Speaker Jacob Olanya the other day. And I remembered that when the NRM was meeting in Nambole and he was campaigning to be chairman
For Northern Uganda.
Of the NRM party, one of the things he said was he delivered the removal of term limits because he was chairman of the Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee that was handling that matter. And I saw him struggle here to explain how
the structure should remain.
How the structure should remain. I saw him struggle to explain that, you know, if you build a house, you can make changes, you can put this table the other side, you can turn around. I was looking at, and I was remembering, I said, okay. So really, if that is the thinking, even right now, will it change if he is wearing the speaker's robes in the full capacity? Would that change?
It would be worse.
It wouldn't change.
But in terms of the power relations, it now looks like it's down to the nationalist movement to choose between Kadaga and Olanya who will become the
It's always
speaker.
been like that. I haven't seen it different.
But even in the NRM, the unspoken rule is that everyone is waiting on the president to actually pronounce himself before
because
the
it's
party
also
can move.
it's also always been like that. Nothing has changed. It's been like that. I mean, the NRM is going to go back, and the argument is you have made so many changes, including in the constitution, that a SEC meeting, if it is indeed true, which has now so far been denied, that a SEC meeting just in 2015, 2016 decided that that's a gentleman's agreement. It can be breached because so many other things have been breached. So I would advise, in my very humble view, Deputy Speaker, the Honorable Jacob Olanya, should fight his battle. He can't go back to the SEC resolution.
But also
Yes.
supplementing on that, on the NRM choosing between Kadaga and Jacob Olanya. The NRM has never actually comfortably chosen Kadaga. Kadaga always fights her way there. So Kadaga plays better politics than everyone else there, especially than Jacob Olanya. Honorable Olanya is not popular with the members. He does not let them say whatever they want, get away with everything. But Kadaga is. Kadaga is popular with the women, the MPs from Eastern Uganda, especially Busoga, the opposition. You have seen the opposition already, like Honorable Sewungu, say they will vote for Kadaga when there's another person who was declared their interest, and from the opposition.
Well, the Lango parliamentary group came and said they'll support
and from
Olanya.
the opposition. No, but you see, you have only the Lango parliamentary group against these many others that Kadaga has in her group. In 2011, Museveni did not want Kadaga, or NRM did not want Kadaga to be speaker. But by the time they come, Kadaga has already mobilized all these groups, and they realized that Sekandi was going to be humiliated there. That was on the day they told Sekandi, please don't participate. In 2016, you know, President Museveni had a battle with Kadaga in the 9th Parliament that no one expected him to want Kadaga back. Remember the Nebanda debate, all those so much trouble that they called, summoned Kadaga in Rachtura, I think, over the Nebanda, and there were issues. The tempers were flaring of Kadaga saying, over my dead body this will happen. In the end it happened. So no one expected that President Museveni is going to allow Kadaga come back. But Kadaga plays better politics, that they find her better prepared than the opponent. And even this time, I said it before the elections, I said the only way Rebecca Kadaga want to be speaker is if she doesn't become MP. And becoming MP was also a must, and she became MP. So now that she's here,
with a very, very high percentage.
Exactly.
Yes.
So now that she's here, they are stuck with her. I am waiting to see how they are going to get her out of that, but they are stuck with her. So in the end, I don't know how President Museveni will play that, to tell the person he told in 2016 not to come back, or to tell a person that will not accept any other position. I have had people say
upward trajectory to vice president.
People like Francis Ayume and Wapakaburo accepted to be demoted. I don't know why we call things like those demoting, and that's the sense of entitlement I talk about. Positions should change. People should be able to serve in one capacity and tomorrow in the next. But those were those people. They were not Kadaga. Kadaga has already seen herself as you know, the most important woman in this country. You're not going to make her go in any other position. And I am waiting to see if I am wrong this time, to see how it will go. But it will not be easy.
You might have to give it back to President Museveni, because at the end of the day, what decision he makes, especially as he announces his new cabinet, and what he can dangle, what he can...
I think they announced the cabinet after the speaker is elected.
Well,
he might announce before he's sworn in.
He can announce before.
It's possible that he can get a cabinet before he's sworn in.
How?
He can announce a tentative cabinet before he's sworn in.
And then on the swearing,
yes, on the swearing in day,
the cabinet list can be announced,
yes.
And then you swear.
Okay, so how will that help? How will that help him get out of this fix? He will put Kadaga in what position? But I've already said that I don't see any other position that she will accept.
The question in that case wouldn't be in what position. The question is, would she have the ability to say no?
Before seeing how
before the president and say, Mr. President, thank you very much, but I'm not interested. And then how that would play out.
I think we will wait and
let's take a very short break, but when we get back, we'll discuss the second biggest story this week, which is the showdown at the Supreme Court. Welcome back to the Fourth Estate. Now, this week, Justice Esther Chisache, in reading her minority ruling of the Supreme Court, had a little bit of drama showdown there with the Chief Justice, Justice Owunyidolo. Let's have a look at the story that happened at the Supreme Court and then get into the discussion on what exactly is behind this story.
What began as a normal day at the Supreme Court ended on a dramatic note. The panel of 9 justices who have heard the Robert Kyagulanyi election petition, which has since been withdrawn, sat to deliver detailed reasons on why they did not allow Kyagulanyi to amend his petition and also subsequently to file 200 more affidavits to back his case. The court was also meant to determine if Kyagulanyi would have to bear costs for withdrawing the case. And in the ruling,
the following orders are made. 1. The petition stands withdrawn. 2. The candidate declared elected by the Electoral Commission, Yoweri Museveni Tibuhaburwa Kaguta, is duly elected as president. 3. Each party will bear their own costs.
There followed a 30-minute adjournment.
So we will resume here at 1:30.
But an unusual atmosphere engulfed the court as respondents' lawyers made way to the court building ahead of resumption of the session. Soon after, one by one, the lawyers, except those of the petitioner, left the premises and only the dissenting justice returned to court. Security personnel were deployed all over the place and the public address system was switched off. Justice Esther Chisache had this to say.
The Chief Justice and the other members of the quorum have opted not to be part of this afternoon's proceedings, and I respect their decisions. However, what is of surprise to me is that my file has apparently been confiscated on the orders of the Chief Justice.
She went back to the chambers for the file containing her ruling, but she returned to a closed courtroom. She then made more accusations against the Chief Justice.
Before I read, I want to note that my file has been confiscated by the Chief Justice of Uganda. But nevertheless, I'm working from a duplicate copy. So I'm very surprised that the Chief Justice of Uganda has chosen to use barbaric means.
In her ruling, which she read from a duplicated copy, she agreed with Kyagulanyi on some of the matters that arose in the case.
Chief Justice had further directed me that my ruling will be read at a later date after he and the other members of the quorum had probably vetted my ruling. I found that order unconstitutional, and I chose to disobey it. When I was appointed a judge of this court in 2009, I swore to uphold the Constitution of Uganda, and I also took the judicial oath, and I am acting based on those undertakings I made.
Legally, it's over for anyone seeking to challenge Museveni's re-election, but at what cost? Cost that will be clearly borne by the Supreme Court, which should be a highly revered institution in a democracy.
It is not true that the Honorable, the Chief Justice, confiscated any file belonging to Justice Chisache. The reason they did not come back is because they asked her to share, and she declined to share.
We condemn it, but again we commend her boldness to stand by what she believes in, to stand by her judicial oath, and honestly she has come and delivered a judgment which we believe captured all the key ingredients.
We have been absolved by this decision, that we could not have been disabled by the first respondent and again proceed with this petition.
Museveni will be sworn in May for another 5 years.
That is the goings-on that happened at the Supreme Court earlier this week. Charles, I want to start with you. We've had dissenting judgments in this country before. None of them has been as dramatic as this, and on election petitions before. What could explain this particular showdown that we've just seen?
Unfortunately, many of us are discussing what happened from what we have seen relayed on the media. Very few people have taken the bar that find out exactly the behind the scenes, what was going on, what was the place of her disagreement. So I'll limit myself, I'll limit my own comments to what we know in the public and what we expect should have happened. Yes, other rulings have been not as dramatic because other incidents around court have not been as dramatic, possibly because of the kind of people who were playing what role. Number one is people have pointed to the Chief Justice. Did he respond appropriately? Why deploy? Why close the chamber? Why shut her out, close her out of the gate the next day? Because those are the things that kind of escalate the rumor mill, that kind of escalate the debate and bring all this drama to the fore. But I have been told that by practice, Justice Chisache, who is the most senior person, senior justice on that bench, she's a PhD of laws, so most educated on the bench, was a candidate for Chief Justice, was among the 3 names that were submitted. So she maybe felt slighted by not being appointed Chief Justice over people she felt maybe she was more senior to than, doesn't share her rulings for other judges to read through. But I also have been made to understand that custom of the court is that when you write a judgment, you share with others so that they are aware of what you're going to read, they know areas of disagreement, not necessarily to edit your copy or to tell you things. But that also comes, is dicey because sometimes some bit of cajoling. If you have read Justice Kanyehamba's book,
yes, the 2006
yes,
election petition.
Yeah, the 2006 election petition, he kind of points to that kind of nudging once people know the position you're going to take. So was that what he was trying to avoid? I do not know, because at the stage of this petition, which had already been withdrawn by the petitioner, how high were the stakes? Out of a quorum of 8 justices of the Supreme Court, 1 dissenting judgment, how high were the stakes? Those, I think, are the questions that we're going to ask. But for me, it's sad in a way, because we're discussing the judiciary in these terms. Here, there is a lot of distance as we discuss it. On other forums on social media and elsewhere, I've seen a very depressing cartoon.
From Spire.
From Spire. But that the judiciary, one of the bastions of confidence for everybody, is mired in this kind of controversy at the moment. I mean, since this petition began, is a sad chapter in the history of this country. I don't know who is right and who is wrong. I don't know if Justice Kisache is right with what she did. Legally, she's within her right. Constitutionally, by the rules of the court, she's within her right. The response of the Chief Justice, what was he trying to prevent? Or the judicial administration? Well, he's the head of the administration of the judiciary. To add all those chapters to the drama is something we need to step back and understand. We need to know who's Justice Kisache, what are her other major rulings, how has she handled herself before, what has been her journey. All those we need to understand. And then, is this a fight between, is this a focus on the Chief Justice as an individual? Is it broader than that? How was the Chief Justice able to garner and keep the majority of members of the bench on his side? Were they intimidated into not coming back? What does that mean? There are many questions to ask. I think the jury is still out there.
Agatha, someone would say the press has been in this courtroom for the last 3 weeks, almost every day. How could we have missed this seemingly big story? And then it just plays out from the justices. Is it a lack of sources? Is it a lack of attention? Is it that we think that the bench shouldn't be investigated as it does its job?
I think it is a lack of both sources, but also attention. I have said it here before that we have gotten more used to the politics of, we go and put our microphones and hear what the judges are saying and go and relay only that. Like, I don't know if it's an issue that managers of newsrooms can resolve by maybe allocating more time and easing deadline pressures and more resources, or if it's a competency issue within journalists. But that's the truth, that while previously you'd have a journalist that would cover that petition, for example, and look around and see the demeanor and stuff, now we didn't. Because up to now, like Charles Mangusha is saying, we do not know anything apart from what they have said, both Justice Kisache and the spokesperson of the judiciary. And it brings me back to what I have asked myself before. I have not yet seen the entire ruling of Kisache, but I have wondered what is so earth-shattering in it that would warrant the Chief Justice going to those lengths to gag it. Because we have had dissenting judgments before in way bigger cases like that would threaten President Museveni's hold on to power, like the 2001 election petition, for example, and the 2006 one. So I was wondering, but the bits and pieces I've seen from Justice Kisache's, it's, the usual dissenting you'd expect. She was saying that the unlawful arrest of Kyagulanyi, for example, should have been constituted as special circumstances to make the court allow that time. That other petitions have been amended before, so there was nothing special here in 2016, for example. That, the president is an incumbent who has enjoyed 35 years of uninterrupted rule, whose party has structures and has not been disrupted like the petitioner's party. So those, I do not think we are like really critical that the Chief Justice does that. But again, as Charles says, it depends on what type of Chief Justice you're dealing with. We have seen the Chief Justice, with all due respect, how he has conducted himself in the petition, when he has told the applicant, oh, you can go and do your plan B, you can. I felt that was not a way of de-escalating an issue as critical as this. When you're a Chief Justice of the highest court in the land, you're expected to, don't add fuel in the fire. What does it help? We have seen how he has handled the Marizi case, the application for recusal. And so his tone is really not something you expect from a Chief Justice, and at a time like this, in a case like that. So you might find that it is true that happened, and he did not handle it the way another Chief Justice would have handled it, for example. But also the issue of her being the most senior on that bench. There is a reason why that woman made it clear that, oh, I was appointed here in 2009 in her speech on Friday. Was it Thursday? It was to show that, I have been here longer. And President Museveni normally does that. And that makes it hard for people to accept that authority, even to the authority of someone that they are more senior than, that they think they are more experienced than. And I did a story about Justice Owindoro when he was made Deputy Chief Justice. And we were looking at the most senior members of that court. There was Justice Egonda Ntende, there was Justice Remi Kasude, and you get someone who has just come from the High Court, and he becomes their boss. They are not going to be easy with that. So Justice Chisache was talking about her being appointed to that court in 2009. And in 2009, when you look, I think Justice Owindoro had just been appointed judge of the High Court. So I think it becomes a bit uncomfortable for some people, and people who don't know how to deal with it, it becomes an issue. And it will go back to the same thing, the manner in which these judges are appointed. The Judicial Service Commission that is there just that doesn't have a say. I have been told a story before by a source of how the Judicial Service Commission interviewed judges for the Supreme Court, justices of the Supreme Court, ranked them in terms of performance, and sent to President Museveni the names that he was supposed to nominate. And President Museveni said, no, you send me more names so that I have a variety to choose from. So they sent names, and against each name was how they performed. They actually ranked them. Yeah, and President Museveni started from the bottom. So at the end of the day, if we do not resolve the issue of appointment of these judges, which has been an issue in every constitutional amendment proposal, especially from the opposition and the citizens' coalitions, we will not solve many of the problems. Yes.
Charles, very finally, how different can the press cover this story in this coming week? Because there are many questions that are people asking that have not yet been covered, that haven't been tackled.
I think newsrooms need to get to that level where they can deploy not just the one person going to report that story. You need resources in a newsroom to send people who are going to listen in and pick other things that are happening, create a mind for analysis. It's dangerous for a newsroom to wait for the reporter who went to bring their report. People watch that same report amidst other pressures and use that as a basis for analysis. People need to get out in the field. Even actually at the level of editors. Editors need to be able to get out and sit in the courtroom themselves, observe for themselves, understand, access other sources, have a chit-chat. Most of these justices are nice people. They have a chit-chat with you in the corridors. Talk to these lawyers, engage them a little more instead of someone running back to file a report because the story has just broken. To be able to get to the depth of this story, it's not just about this story. There are many other stories, the things that are playing from behind the scenes. It's unfortunate sometimes when you're reading and you find that the analysis, what appears like an analysis, is basically a post-mortem of what has been already reported. That normally is a minute portion of what the story is. So newsrooms are going to have, I know it's difficult, you're competing with all these others, but newsrooms need to invest in other people who are looking on the story from elsewhere. You see the reporting of this story lacks, is a bit lacking in terms of historical context. Newsrooms do not have sufficient institutional memory. There are no people who are going to go back. There are few people who are going to go back and analyze this drama in the Supreme Court over this petition with lenses of 2001, 2006, intimate lenses on 2001, 2006, 2016. And that, at the end of the day, significantly impacts the quality of the analysis, the quality of interpretation of facts, the understanding. If you picked somebody at random who was involved in reporting that story, very few people will tell you who Justice Sache is. And that's very few people will tell you who Justice Owindoro is. Very few people who remember even the other justices who are sitting on that bench to make a decision. When you're in a situation like that, you would need people who understand these people more at different stages. That even when the story comes back into the newsroom, there are people who are going to say, wait a minute, go back, check on this. Did you forget about this? Did you remember the other? Unlike a situation where you see, unfortunately, that we'll pick what is circulating on social media. Some of it we don't know how authentic it is, how true it is, and then add that into what we'd call context. That, for me, is...
It's disastrous. You can't call it disastrous. Thank you so much, Charles, for making the time. Thank you so much, Agatha, for making time for us. Thank you so much, our viewers who've been tuned in. The Fourth Estate will return next week discussing the big stories of the week.